Hey, Steve. Long time.
Yeah, there's no picture.
Oh, now there's going to be.
There
Yay.
you-
That's the iconic JRL shot.
Nice microphone. And Daryl, if you use your other camera, we get to see more facials.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, people were complaining about my audio, so I set up a little SM7 through a Neve 1073, and hopefully the sound is a little better. I have a LA2A plug-in compressor on it.
It's working. Yes, you are the radio voice.
Let's see. I'll switch the.
Nora needs one of those. Actually, she's sort of soft compared.
What? Really?
It's all right. We're good.
Okay. Okay, what time is it?
It's time. We're recording.
Oh.
I guess you should say that we're all recording. If anybody doesn't want to be recorded and broadcast, that they should turn off their video and not talk.
That's exactly right. And now you've said it, so you know. So Greg asked me to MC until he shows up because he's going to be a little late. So I wanted to start by asking Daryl and the people if you have any updates from Resonate over the past week. Anything going on over there that we should know about?
There's some organizational stuff getting figured out right now. Okay. Nothing too much that I can report, but things are getting sorted.
Okay. I have a couple of updates. I'm going to be working on a blog post for the RSong blog, and I'm basically just summarizing what is RSong, and I'm trying to figure out if I should also include my personal experience using 3D audio in this post or make that a separate thing. And I also might need some help from you guys to sort of clarify how I should explain what the RSong app is, because I know some of you might have been on a more than 3-hour meeting that RSong had at the RSong Hangout, which we talked a lot about this. That RSong might be used for other applications in the future. For example, to share like little videos and photos and things. So I don't think the idea is for it. Like basically once they set up this system with the cloud and all this stuff, this amazing map that Ned shared last week or 2 weeks ago, the idea is that that can be used for a lot of different things beyond music. So in addition to music, it could be. So I'm just trying to figure out how I should explain that. I don't know if anybody wants to help me with that now, or if we could just talk about it later. But beyond that, there's one more thing. Al Crane from Resonate has been helping us build a landing page for RSong on the internet, which is great. He and me, Fabian, and more people are working on just creating a nice, clean space online so that, like, you know, you said, Steve, that there are people at the AES conference that are hearing about RSong, so they'll be able to go onto, I think it's going to be a page within the RSong website. Maybe Fabian, you could clear that up, but do we know when that's going to be finished, the actual landing page? It's going to have an FAQ and a link to the demos and everything, so it should be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that will hopefully be up by the end of the weekend. As a Daryl and I just had an exchange of emails. There's a request for a credit card. That way, that web page will be up and running shortly.
Okay.
Matter of time, but it should be up pretty soon.
Awesome. And if you guys don't mind, for my blog post, do you think it's better that I call it like an app, like structure idea, or should I just say that it's just a music app for now without regard for the fact that this design could definitely be used for other things in the future? Like, do you guys have any ideas on that? I just want to make it a good blog, and right now I'm like a little bit, I haven't quite decided how I want to explain it.
Well, first, instead of 3D audio, call it immersive audio. That makes it
That's
uh,
sorry, that's
what
what I
it
meant.
is.
I've been meaning to say that, but sorry.
It's a terminology thing, and
So I have to say one thing. Let me just step in here that, Kayvon wrote this white paper, or
Yeah.
I guess you call, and, he had to pass it through immersion to get their approval on it.
Yep.
And I think we need to be careful of calling it immersive or
okay.
any reference. He uses it. He took out almost all the references to immersive, except in one diagram, it still says immersive. But
That since Berlin, we have a problem with saying immersive. I think we're allowed since after that, but
that could be taken offline if there's issues for public.
yeah, so I would just say, yeah, we could probably talk to Kayvon, and then I'd also like to talk to you about your blog. And I'm thinking off the top of my head, maybe it's kind of towards the end. We say, and this architecture is so great, it could be used for blah blah blah,
right.
but not
Yeah.
to make that the focal point.
Ned, I don't think I have your email, so if you want to maybe give it to me, or I could, you could find me on Discord or something and send it to me, but
Yeah, I'll send it to you on Discord.
that would be great. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So does anybody else have anything? Steve, you were saying something about AES. That might be good to tell everybody.
Yeah, well, the Audio Engineering Society is having their conference this right now, actually, over the last few days in New York with the NAB. And Rich Jensen was a keynote speaker yesterday. He's often with us. And Thomas Dolby was a keynote, and there's a lot of other, just a ton of stuff going on there. And Bob Moses, who was recently, for the last 6 years, the executive director of AES, and now we're doing a company together, discovered the RSong app and is spreading it far and wide. And that it really is critical to realize that RSong just shows a given large chunk of data coming off of a blockchain. And when you consider all of the potentials that a large chunk of data coming off the blockchain can provide in so many areas, because you give that to an engineer saying, okay, here is an opportunity that you get a large chunk of data that is immutable and concurrent. What do you want to do with it? Already, my company is getting very deep without having anything to do with our chain or anything to, or the company itself, but the features that are being provided enable some amazing opportunities. And so that's one of the things I'm most thrilled about. And it's the RSong is absolutely a proof of concept that, and a proof of work, actually, that you play it for somebody and say, okay, there it is. Now, next, we don't have you don't have to convince anymore when you have something in your hand that's showing what we're saying this can do. And so, and horizons for design are actually quite far out, because I'm designing a board right now that I can't talk about, but that board is going to have some interesting features.
You mean a mixing board?
No, I mean a circuit board.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, it's a piece of gear. But
Great.
yeah, and again, the closer you get to something actually being real, the less you can say about it. So when people are saying a lot about stuff, it's probably not close to real. But right now, I'm hearing a lot of silence from very, very smart people who are working tight with this new building block. That's the thing, is that we now have a component that's enabled that we didn't have before, that enables a bunch of other things. So RSong is more, it's a great way to, it's a shut up product, basically. But nah, this blockchain thing will never work. Well, here, listen to this and shut up. Now let's go on to the next thing of how we can actually use it. So that's what I've been doing lately.
When we change the application for RSong in the future, which it seems is like pretty inevitable because the design could be used for so many different things, we're not going to also call it RSong, are we? Like, we're going to have a different name for it. Is that right?
Great. Someone else can step in here.
It's not going to be RSong for sharing your photos or RSong for sharing.
No, I think the engine, the technology that's been created will eventually be white labeled and utilized for different purposes.
Right.
For the current day, the usability of the technology, which will eventually be deployed to a streaming platform, because we are not a streaming company, but the idea is that we've got this thing, here it is, we're going to bring it out on a parade, we're going to put a couple of songs on it that will hopefully drive millions of users to the platform, which will then engage in a lot of activity onto the RChain platform. So, but I think that the long game, the end game here is not about we're going to start signing up a whole bunch of bands and putting them on there. I think it's really about putting the technology to test, to make it work in the world, to drive users to it, which will drive activity onto RChain, and which will set hopefully a chain reaction of a whole lot of other activities that will further.
Well, and I think the main idea is that we need to attract validators to the network.
It all ties into all of that. This is really there as a chain reaction, and ultimately, sometime in the future, another streaming platform will have that, be that a company that is our portfolio company, or be that a partner outside of our ecosystem.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I need to go back and understand what this conversation is supposed to be about in the first place.
It's about RSong.
It is about RSong?
And related things. Yeah.
What related things?
Well, in the beginning, I asked about how Resonate is doing, and I'm going to have a question for Fabian about what's going on in the marketing department at RChain, because that is definitely related to the strategy of our being able to roll out RSong. And but technically, I think this is called the RSong community call. So. Oh,
okay. Well, that my question wasn't about this conversation today, about these conversations in general. So, is this mostly about RSong?
Yes.
Okay.
Or per the email that was sent out originally, this is a casual conversation about music technologies and things happening in the music world as they relate to blockchain and the future of the music industry.
Oh, well, that's wider. That's kind of why I was asking.
Well, yeah.
RSong has a lot of attention right now, so naturally it is a hot topic, and we are naturally trying to get our web page up and running. But this platform is certainly a space for us to have an open discourse about other things that are going on within the music space, and creating opportunities for collaboration and for dreaming up new ideas.
Well, the landing page, when you talk about that, who are you trying to get landing there? What are you just getting people who want to sample the new technology, or is this about music in general? I thought this was an arts and entertainment initiative.
I think specific to RSong, I mean, let's just be very, very. I'll be candid.
Yeah.
Originally, the technology was to be deployed to one of our portfolio companies. For one reason or another, that has not come together, and there's a whole myriad of reasons why that hasn't happened. And I would certainly look towards the economic value of our currency right now, which has affected a lot of our portfolio companies in general. In recognition of that, and the challenges that it would take to carry that technology in the present day in the way that our economy currently looks, it is our responsibility, as we have this license, to be able to exploit the power of it. And considering all the work that has taken place with Kayvon and the team in acquiring it and building it, at least in my mind, it is, we have this asset. What can we do to utilize the asset? That way it'll bring attention to RChain and bring on some traffic that will help us on a number of different levels. So that's all what I'm thinking.
Yeah, sorry, Nor.
Go ahead.
So can I add something to give a little more color to that, or a late breaking event? So we've been invited by MIT, and it's strangely the law.mit.edu. Reflective has done a great job with MIT and Harvard user groups on blockchain. And then Dazzle at MIT reached out to Kayvon and a bunch of us, and we had a meeting yesterday. So they're, I think it's next week, having a hackathon. The point of this conference is songs and music on the blockchain. And he is super excited when he found out about RSong. And so we did probably a 25-minute promo video for them yesterday.
Right.
And in general, the idea is that there's going to be a meetup and then there's going to be I think it's a 2-day hackathon, and when Kayvon started talking about RSong, this guy got like just super excited because it's right in line with what MIT is doing. And the hackathon is going to be based around them taking the RSong code and hacking it in some way, extending it, adding new features to it. It's going to be up to the user crowd. Kayvon is going to be on site in Boston for this event. And that's like really exciting. If we can garner, a whole new slew of, college level developers working, to improve RSong or using RSong as their platform, and they see, right, this group is all about, musician rights and paying, equitably, everything that RSong promises. So it's a really great breakthrough. I will dig up the promo video link on YouTube, and I'm going to post it in the chat. So that'll give you a much better understanding of what we talked about.
Also, does anybody know if Kayvon's white paper is public? Because if it is, or even if it's not, I would love to be able to have it to help with my blog post.
I don't know.
He will be along any minute now.
Oh, okay.
It was put on Discord this morning.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, I'll paste a link.
Okay. I have to make sure I know where to look on there because there's so many different little hidden caves.
That's great news, Ned, by the way.
It's great news, Ned, yeah.
Because it's sort of, we're in the amino acid stage of the DNA of the evolution, and all these little pieces getting together. The bundle of functionality is so large, and this really is the heartbeat of what's pulling the future calls, right? And we have to just step every step of the way between now and where that is. And that's an incredible step that, again, if you give smart people ideas of possibilities, they come back with very unexpected results. And so I think that this stuff is going to turn around, and we'll wonder what was all the fuss about once some of these things fall into place.
So I just posted the 2 links from MIT in the chat, so you can go check it out.
Great.
Sweet.
Oh, I see.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt,
That's
but
nice.
I just got some initial performance results. So it looks like even within a single shard, we can hit 10,000 comma events per second, which is within striking.
We can do 10,000 events on a single shard. And over what duration of time?
I mean, 1 second. In 1 second, you get 10,000 comma events.
So that means we currently then have the fastest system. The fastest system.
Are we ready, Greg, to publish that? I mean, this is
So these are preliminary results, and they've been published to the RSong wiki. And what it shows is the tuple space design that I provided, that I initiated with the special K architecture, does deliver the promise that it is one of the highest performing storage mechanisms, in this setting.
Could you get that link for us, Greg?
Sure. Just a second.
actually, that's got to be the highest, because my understanding was EOS clocked in at what, 1,500 a second, and everybody was making a big deal of that.
Yeah, but the point I was trying to make is that I proposed this architecture like before there ever was a blockchain.
No, I agree with you. I mean, kudos. This is amazing. So everybody out there is talking that EOS is the fastest at 1,500. So we should be, our media group should be friggin' pasting this on the signposts everywhere.
So again, this is just preliminary results. And what it does is it requires using using exactly the point I was making, which is that when you have disjoint channels, they run independently.
Well, Greg, congratulations on these results. Of course, I've seen the evolution of this over 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And of course, your collaboration with Mike Stay on some of the things that led up to this go back, what, 5 or 8 years, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it takes a long time to deliver high performance data storage solutions.
Absolutely. In the messaging about performance, I think, you know, the even software developers at large won't get the notion of COM events. So I think that's technically correct to the metrics you're describing, but I think the notion of a user transaction or an application interaction or an application read is more.
Read is wrong. Read is the wrong notion.
Well, what I'm saying is.
Yeah, I totally hear you, but we need to come up with better languaging.
Exactly, so, and also what that means is better, a different metric actually. So people glob onto the 10,000, for example, transactions per second or COM events per second, and they translate that to a language they are familiar with, which would be transactions per second, and it leaves the wrong impression, is my point. So we need to either translate for them to say typically that would be 1,000 transactions a second from a user interaction or something like that.
Actually, it turns out not. Go ahead, Ned. Go for it.
Thanks. So, Ed, I totally agree with you. I've done a lot of research over the last week since our last discussion of this.
Yeah.
And I have found no less than a dozen different definitions of a transaction. And even Oracle has 3 different definitions when they talk about a SQL statement. And that's fine. The community accepts that as long as they're defined.
So whenever we use, sorry to cut you off, Ned. So yeah, as long as when we state anything like that, we either include the definition or to, you know, mention that there's an ambiguity about people's perception. I think that would be communicating in an intellectually honest way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the point I'm getting at is we don't have to have just one definition as long as we elucidate them and lay them out. And I will tell you that the published transactions per second from Visa, the official transactions is actually 25,000, not 40,000. So if you go up to Visa and look at everything they've published on TPS, it's 25,000, and they define a transaction as either a swipe at a POS terminal or an online transaction. And of course, you know, there's times where there are edge cases where the user at Walmart swipes but then has to sign, but they average that all in. And so their stated TPS is 25,000.
Good to know. Well, I'm so sad that it's so early here because I have some champagne, but nobody drinks champagne before 9. So
I want to add a little color. So before we pop the corks, I want to add a little color to this, which is that first of all, COM events can be more coarse-grained than financial transactions. This is a point I've been trying to make over and over and over again. You could have a COM event. You can arrange your application so that your COM event results in an entire audio file being distributed, or you know, all the data of a swipe event at a POS being distributed. So it actually can be much closer to the notion of financial transaction. So but at the same time, our notion of COM event is exactly the notion of transaction that was originally intended when people started talking about transactions in databases. It is precisely and exactly that notion. And so the fact that we now have a notion of transaction that matches a wide range of application semantics, and at the same time ties that to our notion of database style transactions is a good thing. And so I would like to own the language and make COM events be the proper notion of transaction, and then qualify financial transactions for people who are mostly focused on financial transactions. And even there, it's hard to be exactly precise because different wallet implementations will result in different levels of comm events. So you might have an extremely clever wallet implementation that gets you 2 for 1, right? So you get two comm events to 1 financial transaction, as an example.
Excellent point, Greg.
Cool.
Welcome, Kayvon. Good work.
Well, this was actually the team in Poland who removed the sync var, the locking. So we're now, I mean, I don't want to bore you guys with technical details, but kudos go to our team in Poland.
Excellent. I was just welcoming Kayvon to the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, certainly. Welcome, Kayvon.
Greg, the Poland team they work for Pyrofix?
They're on contract with Pyrofix.
I don't know if Rudy ever got to ask a long time ago. And he might not be in the call anymore.
What did you ask? I'm sorry.
Did you have a question? And then we completely went off in a different place.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I'm curious about the overall purpose of this call. And I guess, and the reason I'm asking is because I may not be necessary here. I think after many months of Resonate calls going around and around in circles on technical issues, somebody's typing. Then I would, I don't know much about RSong, and I'm probably not going to be deeply involved with it other than to ballyhoo it. And I get that it's a wedge, and it's maybe way more than a wedge, but from my angle, that's what it is. I'm curious about what I thought this had something to do with booking and bands and performers being interested. And again, I know it's related, but not immediately related in a way that I could be useful for.
Well,
so that's and so much of the conversation goes in that direction. I could be doing other things.
Yeah.
Actually, can I jump in on this one?
Absolutely.
Thank you. First of all, Rudy, I so value your focus on purpose and aim. This is like, it's music to my ears. I really appreciate it when people are asking questions about what is the purpose of this engagement. And what I want to say is a point that I've been trying to make about RSong and all the other dApps, is that we really need to be continually aware of. I'm going to get the language wrong, and maybe you guys can help me with the language. But the way I've been phrasing it is upsell. So if RSong is able to capture a particular user interest or community interest, let's say that we have some previously unreleased material, well-known artists, or we have some new material from well-known artists, or we have some new material from up-and-coming artists that is able to capture the attention of a particular market sector, a particular group of listeners or community of listeners, then the next thing we should be doing is to connect them to all the other dApps that are developing within the RChain space. Now, let me make an example that will seem like a detour and then bring it back to touring and booking. So it turns out that Shop is going to do a token launch in the very, very near future. And those are going to be, it's going to be a token launched on the RChain network. And Shop provides a really interesting marketplace for, it's kind of like a decentralized Amazon, if you think about it that way. And Shop tokens will be very helpful for people who are interested in looking for the kinds of deals and the kinds of spread that they can find on Amazon. Now, I think that with respect to RChain, with RSong, the first thing we ought to be thinking about is whether or not there could be some real estate or some property somewhere on RSong where users, after some number of listens, can get Shop tokens. That seems like a very natural kind of thing, and is a part of this whole idea of being able to create this ecosystem of value and value propositions. And so when I think about RSong and its relationship to other music activities, such as touring and booking, I think a lot about those kinds of opportunities, but especially because the point of RSong is to provide a fulcrum for the leverage of artists. Artists that are high profile have a leverage with respect to their community that runs in the millions. Taylor Swift says, "Go vote," and in one day, 65,000 people registered to vote. Right? This is the kind of leverage they have, and we want to give them even greater leverage by providing the right kind of fulcrum. And RSong is that kind of fulcrum. So it's all about the artists. What we've been focusing on with RSong is the artist, the artist, the artist, the artist, the artist. We want them to have a delightful audio experience, which will make them want to release content there. And we want them to have a delightful presence in the market, which is why the smart contracts are there. So it's all about the artist. And because we know that in this market, they are the driving force. And so when we talk about upsell, we also want to upsell to the artist as well as to the user. So for me, the best upsell to the artist is, how can we make your touring easier? How can we make your booking easier? How can we make your life as a musician in general much easier? How can we serve you as an artist? And so that's why I think, just for me, there's a direct line between this conversation and the kind of conversations that I think you're personally interested in.
Greg, thank you. That's true. And let me give you an example. I'm going tonight to hear David Briggs at St. James Cathedral play Mahler 2 on. He did a transcription for pipe organ, and that's one of the best setups in the U.S. is at St. James, which has 2 organs connected to one keyboard. And this David Briggs is a big name, and I've communicated with him on Facebook quite a bit. I can easily talk to him. Pipe organ recordings are really tricky because all the voices are literally right next to each other, because all the pipes are next to each other. So it's very difficult to get definition in a recording. And also the distance of the pipes and where the sound comes out from the actual recording devices is quite a ways off. So, and it's not as big a community as Taylor Swift's people, but it's big enough. And same with the rest of the classical world. It would be very easy for me to go to David Briggs and say, "Hey, have you thought of this?" I realize that we're not able to talk about the technology yet, and I'm not sure when that will change. I hope it does soon, so that I don't understand the NDA, but I'm trying to respect it as far as I know how. And I'd like to get to the point where I could go to someone, to an orchestra, to an opera company, and say, "Let's do this. Here's something you can do." That's where I actually come into play here. I can go to these people and get things done. I can get almost nothing done in talking about the tech, and I'm perfectly willing to sit and listen to some of it. I just can't do hours and hours of it. So that's why if you sense impatience here, it's real. I would like to get this in front of some people who can use it and do something with it. That's really it.
Great. So we are absolutely opening the floodgates to artists. We're doing this in advance of a whole bunch of stuff, because we know that the conversation with the artist is going to take a certain amount of time. It may take 2 or 3 months in conversation with them before we get to, actual, content delivered on the platform. So if you have an in with your organist friend, do it now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate.
Who do I have him to talk to?
What's that?
Who do I send him to?
You can send him to the landing page and to RSong itself, as a beginning point, and then you can send him to any of the biz dev here, right? I mean, like, why do you need to send him anywhere just yet? You need to tell him what the opportunity is, and then if he wants to go further, if he wants to take the next step, then you
Right.
can send him to someone.
I would like to chime in though and say that I am all for the enthusiasm of let's cast the net and bring everybody on board. But on a contractual level, I mean, we're not ready yet. We don't have a document in our hand that says, give me your music. This is how the money is split. This is how the tickets are deployed. This is how all those things are happening. And, again, add just a little layer of color. 1 month ago, this wasn't the conversation. We were all in Berlin. This was all happening with our portfolio company. And certain things have changed. Hopefully they will be corrected, but granted where we are economically and where the whole ecosystem is economically, we're not quite ready to engage with them right now. But for the silver bullet right now is not good. Yeah, sure, there's a level of let's get as much stuff onto the platform as possible. And then there's the let's be as strategic as possible to be able to target artists that have a massive following that will allow us to bring on millions of users onto the platform in a given moment. And that's really what I'm trying to look at. And for the world of relationships that I have in the music industry, more than half of them are people I am not calling because they will not generate millions of hits for us. And it's got to be in the millions. It's not going to be niche markets and organ players or any of that stuff. No disrespect, but it's got to be things that are going to hit the numbers. When we have a streaming platform in our portfolio company that is ready to receive music, by all means, let's invite everybody that we've got and get them onto that platform. But specifically for the to utilize and exploit the powers of RSong that will then trigger usability onto our platform and bring our numbers up. We need the silver bullet. We need the, whether it's the Katy Perrys or the whoever the big artists are. And then we are in conversations and opening up those doors. We have one on the table right now that we're going to work on making a deal. But part of the process of making a deal, and this is the conversation that I've had with Greg and with Ian and with Ned, is like there's what does the contract say? What is the economic value? Why are you going to come here? And we know hypothetically what that looks like, but the real economics of that information needs to be put together in a spreadsheet, put together the contract, and the steps of it of like, here's my song, here's my Celia information is embedded in it, here's my cryptocurrency wallet is embedded in it, here's how the money is dispersed when people are engaging in the song. How are people going to pay for access for the song? These are things that we haven't figured out, but I imagine our partners over at our portfolio company have figured out those numbers. And there's a conversation to be had there because there's a collaboration that would allow us to take steps to accelerate this process of how we can actually engage with RSong.
So
go ahead.
Greg, you muted.
I have to say, I love the conversation. I think there's a flavor of this conversation that happens in almost every development and product and service effort, which is top down versus bottom up. So Fabian is now in the role of representing the top down perspective, and I'm currently in the role of representing the bottom up perspective. And I think that both of them have to proceed. And if you look at biology, they proceed actually at the same time. One of the things that I love to point out is that a lot of people think that when you read the DNA strand that happens in this nice, orderly, sequential fashion. It isn't true at all. All of these proteins are all simultaneously trying to jostle and joggle their way onto the DNA strand all at the same time. It's not nearly so orderly or top down as we think it is. It's much messier than the pictures you saw in your biology text in high school. So the same thing here. A conversation, is it David Briggs? Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah. So a conversation with David Briggs doesn't have to lead to a contract. Instead, it works the other way around. We talk to David. We understand what he might need in a contract, and that begins to inform our contractual process. And in particular, one of the things that I think is so important is that we involve the artists and we have the conversation with the artists about economics in public. That's right. One of the best marketing efforts we could ever have. Is like imagine, think of this world. It's a cartoon, but to me, it's a beautiful cartoon. You've got Bruce Springsteen and Lady Gaga and Kanye West and Taylor Swift all at a table and there's cameras at the table, and they are describing what they require of the economics for their music. And also at the table, we have developers from around the world who are putting together their requirements. And we have people listening to the artists and saying, okay, well, if you want to do it that way, then we have to write the smart contract like this. Oh, but if you want that feature, we have to write the smart contract like that. And so the whole world begins to see that there's this direct relationship between what the artists or any other community, value providing creative community does, and how it gets realized in the smart contracts that run on the blockchain. That to me is the kind of world I would love to see. Yes, it's a cartoon, but there's something like that that's real, that is all about bringing this economic discussion out of the shadows and out of these places where publishing rights get hidden or obscured, and accounting practices steal money left, right, and center, and into the light of day. And that's the kind of world I would like to live in, and that's the kind of world I would like to foster. And so having these conversations early, but with full disclosure, it's early stages. We're still working this all out, and we want you to help us work it out, so it's fair to you.
Do we have to invite Kanye West?
I love diversity of opinion. I love diversity of opinion.
I would personally not engage with Kanye West or anybody in the current White House. Just stating.
I understand. I hear you guys.
Greg, on the bottom up thing, I know that and I keep hearing Fabian saying our portfolio company. I think he's talking about Resonate. I'm imagining that's okay. That went round and round and went, at least the conversation part often went nowhere. Or at least from my angle, it went nowhere. And I would like to see this go more than nowhere and so, to some other angles. I think really PR-wise, you do your best stuff when you have people working on all the different angles. And whether pipe organ or symphony orchestras or operas are as big as the audiences for Kanye West and all the other people out there, it doesn't matter. They're big audiences, and I think they're important to have, and the conversation should start now, not later. And they don't have to lead the contracts. I agree with you. But at least, we're suffering from lack of PR for this very reason. That's why we're suffering as a company right now from PR, because we didn't do this stuff. That's why.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Audience for the Beijing Symphony is booked 10 years in advance. So
because of this, right?
Yeah. So there's a definite deadly embrace of PR and marketing, and not wanting to do PR because it's too early. We don't have we don't have anything to back up the PR if they generate interest. And I personally don't agree with that. I think we're missing the boat on so many different levels that, we're going to try to go from 0 to 100 in 1 second when mainnet launches. And
no, that's not going to happen. I think there's a build. There's also the process of being able to identify the right firm. I've already pulled in 3 different. I will have 3 proposals in hand, hopefully by mid next week, as Derek and I have had 3 meetings now with PR companies, and Greg has spoken to our favorite of the lot, and hopefully we will be able to engage with them come Thanksgiving, or that way we can jump into 2019, with some thrust. And all of this again ties back into the DApps, the validator sale, our RSong, what content we're going to deploy on it, being able to drive the numbers up. It's all of these things are interconnected. But certainly if we were to slap on a PR company today, there's a whole lot of story coordination and a marketing plan that needs to be put together as a step-by-step how we're going to let the dominoes fall.
Yeah.
Another aspect.
And actually, so I'm up on the Shopin website. There's absolutely no mention of Archain. They mention Ethereum and Bitcoin, but there's not a single call out to Archain.
Yeah, they have to change that. But this all just got worked out in the last day or two. So it's kind of difficult for them to manage their website.
Okay.
We did.
Yeah,
What's that?
Are they coming in through Reflective or directly with the co-op?
Oh, no. Shop is a portfolio company.
Oh, okay. I got to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Our chain is so eminently marketable. It's crazy. I mean, this would be one of the easiest companies in the whole crypto space to market.
I agree.
If we
Yeah.
Well,
did
here,
it.
one of the issues is education about things that no one even knows what they don't know.
Yeah, but you don't need
What do
to
you mean by that?
understand the complexity of sharding a network in order for people to get excited about a blockchain that's fast and secure.
Right.
So at least the people that I run into have potentially heard of Bitcoin at one point in some contexts, but that doesn't. It's like electricity. You can do a lot of things with electricity, yeah, but don't understand what's enabled by it. I guess that's the thing, is that it's difficult to boil down, or it hasn't been done yet, of sort of a zeitgeist communication of, we have now a new electricity for information. And what electricity enabled in the physical world, this electricity for information can enable in the information world. And being able to, I mean, even putting, I'm trying to figure it out still very much. And just the little pieces of information of, okay, this is what this enables. Then as an engineer, I go off and design with it. But that's at the engineering circle. We haven't even gotten out past,
Well, engineers don't get out past that, but people do.
well, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
This company has people in it. I mean,
we need to generate in the general public. Like, well, my dad's 98, so he's probably not a good example. But somebody who, if you give, like for musicians, the enabling capabilities, not it doing, but what it enables for the Creative Passport and for smart contracts, just those two things together sparks interest of, I want to know more.
Well, I wrote an article that is an intro to blockchain technology for musicians, which did very well on Medium. And I could also write another article that is just an introduction to our chain. I mean, maybe I'm the worst person to do this. Maybe I'm the best person, because I don't go too deep into the technology. So maybe I would write it like, as somebody who isn't going to get too complicated. But
Well, I'd love to work with you on that, Nora. If you want any.
yeah, I mean, if you guys think it's a good idea for us to have one of those up on Medium somewhere, maybe that's like one thing we need to do. I don't know. Daryl,
Yeah, it's the hot apple pie on the windowsill. It's the how does it smell good, rather than what are the components of the pie and what's the temperature you bake it at.
Yeah, and don't forget that metaphor, because that's the most important one you've come up with. That is exactly right. Yesterday, Nick and I met with Hummy Man. Some of you probably know who he is. He's written music for a lot of big Hollywood films, and he teaches film scoring now. And when he asked where we worked, we told him about our chain. He was very interested, and he says, I don't understand anything about it. However, he's a link to a very large community of musicians who make a lot of money doing music. So is that important? I think so. And he didn't care if we could explain it to him perfectly. He said, well, you have your job cut out for you to try to explain this to people, because I don't get it. So
People buy 4K plasma TVs. They don't understand how a TV works.
Precisely.
Right.
I'd like to share a concept. Concept is this. So Resonate, as we know, we've been primarily focused on that platform to be a place for independent artists that are, releasing content. They're not signed to Sony or Universal or any of the major labels. So it's easy to be able to work with their content and their data. And then there's the idea of RSong, cryptonomics, digging deeper into catalog. Greg and I were having a conversation earlier this morning around, what if we were to create cryptocurrency for a legacy artist that passed away, who we have access to a whole world of content from them. But how much further can you go with that artist if they've passed and you only have 50 unreleased songs and a bunch of video footage? And how do we convert those virtual assets or the coins, the tokens, into other arenas within the RSong platform? And we're talking, we're throwing out names like Katy Perry and Kanye and all those types of things. But the reality is that if we can find a viable economic model to present to large artists, look, there's a lot of people that are a phone call away, but it all adds up to what do we have in our hand to be able to present to them? Because we have a lot of vision here, and what we need, or at least what I need right now, is a document that illustrates what the economic value is for a Katy Perry or whomever else to engage with us and exclusively release a brand new album with us. I need that, and I guess my plea here is and I'm really looking to Ned and Kayvon around, of course Greg, but I need a team to help put this together, to get an economic a spreadsheet to say, here it is on Spotify, here it is with us, and of course here it is with Resonate, and it starts here in this world called RSong, and then from RSong it moves on to Resonate, and then it goes off there. But in entering into the RChain ecosystem of the release of a brand new album, and the exclusivity for us to have that album, be it a Pearl Jam or a Katy or whoever it is, and mind you, there are a ton of artists out there that have millions and millions of fans that are not signed to the major labels that we can approach. There might be an opportunity here that, again, engagement, millions of clicks, people engaging in our ecosystem, and us being able to have, several million communications per hour. And it's all possible, but I need a contract. I need a feasibility study that illustrates what this actually is, because I know I could pick up the phone and sell it, but I need that contract, and I need some experts on our team to help me make that happen.
Yeah, and I would think, Greg, you're maybe 2 steps removed from Nine Inch Nails, vis-a-vis Adrian Belew, David Bowie, and Bowie, produced Nine Inch Nails.
Bill Riflin, you're right. I mean, these are all. I think there are a lot of people in our current network who are one phone call away from very high profile artists.
Yep.
And so I want to echo something that I said before, so I put a lot of weight on the bottom up part, because I felt at that moment that didn't get enough, that didn't have enough weight behind it. But I want people to understand that I really believe that the functioning dialogue, the dialogue that generates the most energy and the most value and gets us going places like Rudy wants to do, is one that includes both perspectives. Fabian is absolutely right. We gotta have the contractual apparatus in place. We gotta have a clear economic proposition. We've got to have a pipeline and stages and steps, because most artists are not going to be pioneers, right? They might be pioneers at singer-songwriting, but they are not pioneers at tech or at other aspects of the distribution of digital assets. So we have to put in a pipeline that makes their lives easier and enables them to reach their audience. So it really is both pieces of this dialogue, and many more pieces of the dialogue: the top-down organizing view and the bottom-up, from the people, from the artists upward. Right? Those two have to come together, and it's in the sort of tension between these two viewpoints that the real thing starts to happen.
Yeah.
And so to that point, Fabian. I got a lot of energy out of these hours and hours of engagement with investors over the last few years, it felt like years, the last few days about why we did RSong. And one of the things that came out was me finally opening up about my view of the tokenomics with respect to artists. So if people don't, it's a little bit complex and nuanced, but I'll take just a couple of minutes here. I have to get to the staff meeting soon. But I'll just take a couple of minutes to describe that view and then maybe we can pick that up next week or something. But for a living artist, this is really, really straightforward to do. But there are a lot of dimensions in this space. So what we did with RSong was we completely avoided the whole question of designing the tokenomics. We just avoided it entirely. What we said was there is a clear and obvious unit that is a complete playback of a song. Once you've listened all the way through to the song, we decrement your playback count. And you only have so many playback counts before you have to go re-up in some way. And then we use the metadata in the smart contracts to provide a fraction of that playback to each of the different contributors for that particular song or audio content. So that's what's implemented, and you can go look at the smart contracts to see that. Now, a fraction of a playback does not convert into something you can take into Thriftway and buy some tofu with. Okay? Now, what you have to do, you have to turn that into something that someone can trade on for other things that they value. So one thing that an artist could do is to value their work in terms of rev. They could say, if you listen to one of my songs, that's equal to 1 rev, or whatever it is, right? Whatever their valuation is, right? And that has advantages because very soon the rev will be connected to lots and lots of other tokens, and they will have a path to something that they value. They could trade the rev for dollars, or they could trade the rev for Bitcoin or whatever, and that gets them to be able to walk into the coffee shop and get a cup of coffee, right? But it has disadvantages because the rev is not necessarily featured in terms of their specific offerings. Now, so they could instead create their own token, and that's easy to do on top of our chain. It's actually easier than ERC20. So they create their own token. So let's imagine that Nora creates a Nora Jones token, and then. But when you have one of those tokens, if you have enough of those tokens, you can trade those for VIP passes to her concerts, or you can trade them for backstage access, or you could trade them as a ticket to enter one of her studio sessions, or and the list goes on and on and on and on in terms of the special, unique value that Nora can provide. And so now let's think about the range of behaviors that might be associated with that, right? So the first thing to note is that if every artist does this, very quickly we have an unwieldy number of tokens, right? Like, it only takes 1,000 artists to do this, and suddenly we have 1,000 different kinds of tokens, and there are all these issues about trading between them. And so now I want to talk about human behavior. What we can see with just immediate observation is there is a vigorous drive for people to game systems. There's lots of trading around baseball cards and comics and all kinds of collectibles. So people love that kind of behavior. On the other hand, people also really, really want convenience. They don't want to have to go through 10,000 trades in order to be able to get those tickets to walk into Nora's concert, right? Maybe they're only holding, tickets for tokens for Dr. Dre, but they really want to go see Nora tonight. And they don't want to have to go through a lot of rigmarole to just go walk into Nora's concert. Now, in between those two extremes of human behavior is the fact that everybody holds a smart device, right? Everybody is holding a smartphone that can potentially automate a lot of that. And so what we'll find is that there's probably a sweet spot in terms of this complexity where we encourage people's drive to gamify and trade and have fun like that versus people's need and alternate drive to have things simple for them, right? So somewhere in between there, and I believe that the whole design of that system, it is a rich game in and of itself. It's a dialogue that the community and the artists and the technologists can all get into the mix together and have fun making that happen, right? And the more we make that public, the more we have ownership in that process,
the more it will feel good to all of the different stakeholders. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I'm sorry to spend so much time here, but that was what I wanted to say about the tokenomics.
I think this has been a really productive call. I think we're warming up in our RSong conversations. There's a lot of work in front of us. I'm hoping a think tank will build out of this. There's opportunity in front of us to be able to really work our RSong technology and how that could potentially integrate with some of the technologies that are being currently built across the RChain universe. And Ned, I'm really looking for you to help me out, as you have a really deep understanding of what everybody is building and what pieces we could pull in from what's out there to help us.
Just to echo what Greg said, this is the issue that almost all the portfolio companies are dealing with, because they all want their own token, they all want their own internal economics, and then it's all about what use of it is in the real world. So,
yeah. All right. We got work to do, guys.
Thanks, guys. I love this. This time in my week is a special time. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Off to the staff meeting. Bye, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.